Pokemon Legends ZA is slated for a 2025 release. However, I still believe there might be a lesser Pokemon game released in the holiday of 2024. This would either be a Gen 5 faithful remake or perhaps an HD version of one of the 3DS games like Pokemon X and Y. All right, Jake, so the last time we had you on Hidden Power, the whole point of having you on was to explain and prove to you why we were going to get Gen 5 remakes in 2024.
Right.
Do you wanna,
I forgot about that.
Do you want to give us like a little bit of a rating of that interaction? Because
listen, I loved hanging out with you all, but I remember I had no idea that was the word on the street, and then you all gave me a lot of compelling arguments for why that was coming next, and I got to tell you, I wholeheartedly believed you all.
Oh, no.
It wasn't a trick.
I was part of the problem. I spread the word, and I became a fundamentalist of black and white. And I was telling everybody, I was like, no, this is the way. This is the way.
Yeah.
But now
Soul told us.
But I'm kind of like,
was like, it's gonna be a Legends game of Chaos, and Jake was like, ridiculous. It's black and white.
but I feel like you guys could still be right.
Yes, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to bring up. Yeah,
okay. I think
there's a smidgen of hope that this is what I'm envisioning. Right.
Okay.
When Pokemon Legends Arceus was announced, alongside Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those games were sold as kind of like a 1-2 punch, a package, right? And I think 2 years later or whatever it has been at this point, I think the reception of Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl is that they're kind of a letdown, or maybe just not what we had hoped, and that the Legends Arceus game was like a triumphant success within Game Freak and within the Pokemon community. I am kind of looking, this is just a slim possibility that Game Freak and the Pokemon Company have decided to say, let's put our best foot forward, let's show the world a game that they're not expecting, which is Pokemon Legends ZA, a return to Kalos, blow our minds, get us super excited, and then midway through 2024, they say, guess what? Cherry on top, you do actually have a game to play at the end of the year, this holiday season. We didn't make it, but you can buy it if you want. It's going to be, it's a black and white remake. That's what I'm thinking.
I agree. I did a similar thing that we did to Jake to my own wife. She also, believed me that Unova remakes were happening. And she was excited for it because she never played Black and White. That was when we've talked about on the show before. Like everybody's kind of had a falling out with Pokemon at one point. Hers was Gen 5.
Okay.
So she was excited because like she's like, even if it's like Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, it's a brand new game for me.
Yeah.
Well, but I told her, it made sense to announce Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl and Legends together because they went hand in hand, right? They were both Sinnoh. They were promoting each other, you know what I mean? But Unova and Kalos aren't really gonna promote each other the same way Unova and Sinnoh did.
Yeah.
So I think like the thing is they know if we show our traditional remakes that are done by a third-party company right now, and everyone goes, oh wow, that looks so cool, and then immediately after show Legends ZA, no one's gonna care about that. So instead what we do is we make it look Legends ZA, look, this big game, it's coming out in 2025, and they're like, oh, so no Pokemon game this year.
Yeah.
And then later they changed the feel of the third-party game because it's like, you thought you weren't getting a game this year, but Papa Game Freak has fed you, you know?
Absolutely. So I guess
I want to know what Jake thinks though. He's over there contemplating, and I'm curious in general.
Yeah, it's funny. I will say I do think that maybe more of the reason that they didn't show this alleged 2024 game is to avoid what I was saying about them showing BDSP too early.
Sure, yeah.
And I wonder if that plays a role. But I'm also gonna push back on this a little bit.
Okay.
I don't think a remake of Black and White, the way that BDSP was remaking Diamond and Pearl, I don't see that in the cards. It doesn't make sense to me. I think that there's something off in this calculation. And I think like the kind of like Gen 4 synergy that you were alluding to between Legends Arceus and BDSP, I feel like that kind of made sense. And looking back, I see how there's like a hedging of the bets happening in case Legends is not as received in the
They're
way,
saying
you know
you're
what I
still
mean,
gonna
as
get
they
your
were.
classic
Yeah.
remake.
Yeah,
totally get it,
and I
yeah.
think that there's also something working between those two games where it's like, okay, these are both like the Gen 4 region kind of, but they're working together. In like in BDSP, you get the Gen 4 starters. In Legends, you don't.
Yeah.
And like they're communicating because they couldn't just give you the same starters in both games. That would be silly. So with the knowledge that we've got this Kalos Gen 5, the Gen 6 game or whatever, and this is the Legends game coming here. What is that Legends? What is the I assume Ilka is making this.
faithful remake.
What is,
No, we don't think Ilka.
and you don't think Ilka?
Oh, we don't.
We don't think
No
Ilka.
one in this chat thinks Ilka. No.
That's okay. So another.
I thought Ilka.
So
Oh, you thought Ilka?
Why would
well,
Ilka
see,
not be
Ku-
working on the game? Well, who else is
They're
going to work
not.
on the game? DNA?
Ku has stated that Game Freak does not want to work with Ilka anymore, which is kind of where it all comes from.
All right.
So, okay, see, and then I think it's even less likely that it would be a faithful remake, that they would have them do the same kind of thing. Because I think something that happens that people don't recognize enough with game development is that Ilka makes this game. I think that BDSP, if I'm remembering correctly, was made in the Unreal Engine, which is unusual for a because
It's
that's not what
unreal.
Game Freak. That's not what Game Freak works in. But the reason that you work in the Unreal Engine is because it is the standard in the industry. It is easy to hire contract workers who can work within the Unreal Engine, and you don't have to train them. Whereas you hire somebody at Game Freak to work on your game, you need to commit a year, 2 years to training that person just to learn how to develop within this proprietary engine that only Game Freak uses. And that's like a whole part of game development that makes it tough. Harder to rely on contractors because you have to train them, that whole thing. So why would you have Ilka out here come get familiar, learn how to make a Pokemon game in the way that they make it, commit those resources, now developing institutional knowledge, and then say, okay, everything you guys learned and gained from that, you're gone. You're done. We're not doing this anymore. And maybe that's due to reception, but I don't know. The way that these things are planned years in advance, I think that implies to me that they pivoted, that maybe there was something in the books for them, and then they changed it and gave it to somebody else, and I just don't see them doing that. I just don't. I think they stick to their plans.
Okay.
So I
So
I
your
kinda
prediction.
think,
So what is, just to clarify, what is your prediction?
I think it is an Ilka game that I think Ilka is making a game using the same tools that they used to make BDSP. I don't think it necessarily has to look like it, but the same tools. And I think that it is I almost think BDSP internally is positioned so that Ilka can get a run at making a Pokemon game.
Yeah.
And then now they can make something that is a little bit more, in an ancillary way, interesting. Yeah. So I kind of see a top-down styled, kind of like a classic Pokemon game coming from Ilka with maybe some leadership overseen from Game Freak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
But you do think it's happening though, or no?
I'm not sold on if it's coming this year or not. I think that the game is being made, and I think that they're using Ilka in this way as kind of like a support staff studio and can oversee what they're doing. But
because what we're working off of, so to just cue you up, what we're working off of is information that was corroborated and leaked to us for the last year that Gen 5 remakes would be coming in some capacity. That's just what we're operating.
But the thing
off
is that the thing is with leaks that nobody ever thinks about is that things change.
Yeah.
Things change, man. Like I
saw
see
that
it
with
too-
Scarlet and Violet. It's DLC. Ku
I
talked
see it
about how
two
there were all
ways.
these features and all these terraforms, and he says they got scrapped.
I see it two ways, like that it is happening this year and that it was always planned, because this year was never going to be a Game Freak game. It was always going to be an outsourced game, because they're just in the terms of development cycles, there's no way that they could have possibly done it. So this year would make the most sense. PLA or PLZA, whatever, is a 2025 game. So what's for 2024? Maybe it's a gap year, maybe it isn't.
Yeah.
The thing is, I agree with you in the sense that it doesn't make sense. They don't go together really, but if you split them up completely, then it could make sense. You know what I mean? Like, this is a whole different thing. This is like just for this year. You're not even supposed to be thinking about Legends ZA. You know what I mean?
I agree. And that's why I kind of think when I say I think you doing a game that is evoking an older game. Pokemon Legends ZA evokes XY. It's like right there in the title. I don't think you have back-to-back games that are evoking two different older regions. I think you got to have something else. And I think honestly my biggest point here is I think Soul, I think you're pretty much right on with the planning, and I just cannot make myself believe that Game Freak in their plans said, "Okay, we're going to do Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. We're going to do the year where it's Scarlet and Violet DLC, and then the next year nothing." I can't make myself believe that. Like, maybe if a game came out last year, but in a year following a DLC year, absolutely not, dude. True. Absolutely not. Like, it's not. Those numbers are not numbering. They're not numbering. Yeah. So
well, there you go. That's a very important point to it all as well. I also think that Legends Arceus was more of a Sinnoh remake. It was kind of like it filled the remake thing, like you were talking about
that's
before.
What PLZA is doing, right? This is
but
our
it's not.
Z version.
I don't think it's a remake of it. It really isn't a remake of X and Y. It's literally just in the city. I don't think it functions as a
I think it's a story for Zygarde. I think Zygarde in the timeline of X and Y is dormant. It's in its 50% form. But we get to experience these legends. That's why it's called Legends ZA. We get to experience these legends in their heyday, right? When they were
at their sequel. It sounds like you're describing a sequel to me.
Yeah, but it's in the past, and that's why it's ZA.
You said at the beginning that it's not a remake game. It is not. It's not. A remake game.
Listen, it's not a remake of the same exact characters, but it's a spiritual. It's a return. It's different, you know. Like just like in PLA, unless you're saying PLA is a sequel because it takes place after. Technically speaking, it's a sequel, right? Because it takes place in the after.
It was our Gen 4. It was our proper Gen 4 remake. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was the proper one, and then BDSP was like, oh, in case they don't like it, just like we were talking about before.
Yeah.
You know. But anyway, all that to say that I heard from very trusted sources that Black and White remake was coming this year, and I still believe it. But the only thing is, did they like cancel it or push it back or just change the idea that like these two things don't add up? I mean, I agree with you in the money. Like the money, it's like, are we gonna go a whole
2 years?
Can I offer something that I never hear Pokemon people talk about, and I'm curious to hear your response? I think that Game Freak and the Pokemon Company maybe think Gen 5 sucks.
Yeah, it's true. Possible. Because when they released it literally was the worst performing game of all time.
Yeah, and I think that maybe they have on the inside, they feel that it does not command the same kind of nostalgia and enthusiasm as some of their other generations. And I wonder, dude, if they're like, if they're in Scarlet and Violet DLC, they're like, hey, this is in whatever Unova, and like, what if that is all they trust it with?
Yeah,
they're like, this is as much as we're giving.
Insane,
this, I mean, dude. This is Gen.
That would be disappointing.
Like right now, that's really what it seems like. I was gonna say this earlier. Yeah, I don't want Gen 5 remakes done like in this.
Yeah, we want Black 3 and White 3. We want a third sequel. A continuation of the story.
But I believe that it's happening like that.
I'm not
behind it because I want to be behind it. I'm behind it because I was told this, and I believe it. That's why.
Well, and I think the biggest thing too is like, aside from what you've heard, like even so, Riddler Coup has been, he's gotten stuff wrong. Like we can now say that, and I can understand the argument of like some people say, Coup said, oh, this is gonna happen, Scarlet and Violet DLC. It didn't happen. He goes, it was scrapped. And I can see where people go, well, that's a lazy explanation.
I feel like that. I'm like, own up to it.
I would
for
be
what
with
it's worth.
that.
For what it's worth, though, the feature to the PK Hex like feature, there was data found when Teal Mask came out. Coup hater. Coup hater. But there was data found.
We've labeled you. You've labeled yourself.
when Teal Mask came out, there was data for a like there was data existing for some kind of customizable gift Pokemon. So a lot of people think that that was kind of the PK Hex like feature.
Okay.
But regardless of that, even if he has gotten things wrong, he also has clearly proven that he is privy to, you know, inside knowledge.
So I want
that said, Pyoro also he also has a ton of, you know, inside knowledge, and Pyoro and Ku both said, well, and Ku actually never explicitly said it, correct me if I'm wrong, Soul, but Pyoro said what he heard was that there was a third-party game coming out this year that was Black and White remakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say one last thing before you say Pyoro lover. Listen.
Then believe in Pyoro, Jake.
If it was just Ku that had said this, then I'd be like, okay, he might have been wrong about this. Like, he might have been fed false information. But I have heard from someone else that also said the same thing. I heard from someone else that nobody knows in the community that was happening, and it wasn't just from Ku. And then I heard from Ku, and then I heard from Pyoro, who's saying the same thing. So that's like 3 corroborating stories, unless they planted this information and they were like, send it to the leakers,
and that happens
make
in Star Wars all the time.
I don't know, but it just makes me think that. But if there wasn't backed up ones, I would be less prone to believe this. But I do also, Lumi, from the same leaker, I heard the same thing about the PK Hex system, which it wasn't a PK Hex system. It was like
it lowers the speed ID to 0.
Yes. And what was the guy's name that gave you the legendaries?
Snacksworth.
He had a brother. And his name is some kind of stupid name exactly like that. And it did.
Soda's Worth.
I heard it's from 2 separate people that don't
bottle caps
like connect. So you know what I'm saying? Like, those things make me think these things. But
here's the thing.
That's the extent of it.
We're gonna have to wait and see. Right, we're gonna have to wait and see to see if they actually announce any sort of game. I just want to offer up one amazing, and I just want to bring this up because Lumi and I were like, you know, fake beefing on Twitter. But I think something amazing that could be integrated in the Pokemon time, like in the release cycle, right, are just like HD ports. There are so many. I'm playing through X and Y on my 2DS right now. I'm playing through X version, and yes, it looks like a 3DS game. But if they just upscaled it, I think there's a lot of beautiful scenery in that game. Even the battles, like they could just upscale it to look like how the Pokemon look already on the Switch. Here's some well, and that also ties us into that also ties us into the most ironic thing, which is people are no longer able to emulate these games and play them in HD because what is it called? Citra was just removed, or like they just closed down. Is that what's going on?
No. Okay. So there's a group that kind of manages the Citra emulator, which is a 3DS emulator, and they just had participated in a lawsuit with Nintendo. Nintendo sued them, but they settled. So it's not like they go to court or anything, or like precedents are established. But they settled, and part of the settlement was that this group was going to take down their they were no longer going to offer their Nintendo Switch emulator. Nothing was said about the 3DS emulator or anything. Like nothing. There's no to public knowledge is that that's not involved, but because they are the same group, they kind of like took down all the stuff, and maybe that was a safety precaution or whatever. So it could come back or whatever. But yeah. So that's the status of those emulators.
Okay, that's very helpful for clarity. But I guess my point is, these faithful remakes, they're glorified ports. I've been saying this since BDSP was announced, right? All it is, it's a fresh coat of paint. It's just a brand new engine.
It's worse than that, though.
It's
actually removing features and changing features to be lesser than the original.
It is, and that's a bad example, and maybe that's why Game Freak won't work with Ilka. But if they give us more of these faithful remakes, or if they literally just give us a polished HD definitive edition of X and Y, right? We see that again if we're looking towards the Zelda series. We see that all the time. We see Breath of the what is it? What's the
Link's Awakening?
We see Link's Awakening gets that's a faithful remake, but then we get what is it? Wind
Skyward
Waker.
Sword, didn't that get something?
Yeah, Wind Waker
On
gets
the
an
3DS at
HD.
least?
Wind Waker HD, sure.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, I think the biggest thing that I would want, and the reason why
Mhm.
people are outcrying for remakes,
Mm.
is people want to revisit these regions. And I think
Mm-hmm.
the greatest thing about the 3DS and the DS was that I could play every region, every Pokemon region on my DS or 3DS. And I would love to see Switch 2 kind of return to that, right? Whether they port some of the older games, they give us HD remakes of some of these 3DS games. I don't know. I just see that as a really easy solution and
The
alternative.
biggest
to a
question will
faithful
be how
remake.
to handle dual screen with
They would have
Well,
to.
I mean,
They would
you
have
don't
to
wanna
remake it in a way, right?
I don't know if
port
you
it.
want to get that much into detail of like how they would do it, but
I don't know how they would do it.
I saw your conversation about it, and just it does feel like to me that they want to go into this almost cycle, and this is just speculation, but of that they make like this experimental game, like a Legends series game, then they make the regular gen game, and then they just give us a remake, but it's not really a remake game. It's just literally a reskin,
And
like
it's-
upgraded version of it.
And it's to
which-
give context to players who haven't
Works.
played those original games, right?
Yeah.
And it
I don't know,
sucks.
it does seem like it could be that way because now we're getting into the 3D territory
Yeah.
of Pokemon. Like once we get to Gen 6 remakes, what are they gonna do other than just upsale it?
Exactly.
I mean, they could do all kinds of stuff, but I'm
That's
just
why
saying
we're pivoting and we're
it's
not
the direction
doing
that they're
remakes.
going in. It seems. I mean, and we were talking about before with what Jake was saying. If they don't do a black white remake this year, the next time that they would do an outsourced remake would be in 2020. So 2026 would be
2027.
yeah, 2027 would be the next one, basically.
I think we could think outside the box too, and I do, and
Yeah.
I always think it's interesting that people never bring up an Ilka Platinum game. I always think that is interesting.
That's pretty interesting.
I always am like, I think that has more of a chance than people give it credit for.
Like they
I don't know.
introduce a platinum
I don't-
version of their game. I don't see
Yeah.
it, but
I don't
would
think
like
the
it.
reception of BDSP was great. The sales were
Does
decent.
that? How much does that matter?
I don't know, but
I think
It
a
looks
lot.
I don't know.
I think Game Freak has actually shown they really
sold
care to
well.
listen to that kind of stuff.
it did sell.
What is
decently,
because
though.
because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is that internally they have a sales benchmark, and they say, did we hit our benchmark for this game? And like, you got to imagine that that number is variable depending on where they are in the release schedule. Pokemon Legends Arceus, for example, never gets a holiday season where it gets to be the star on store shelves. And yet, with that aside, sold pretty well for when it came out.
Yeah.
And you have to imagine that their internal benchmarks said, oh, Legends Arceus didn't sell as well as BDSP, but it was also one game and it didn't get that holiday thing. And here we are with our Legends 2 game, essentially.
Well,
Which is
also
cool.
too, though,
Which is cool.
they would have saw more money
Yeah.
from Legends Arceus because it wasn't too far behind Brilliant Diamond Shining, and they would have saw more money from it because they would be sharing some of the income with Ilka for BDSP.
That's not necessarily. Not
Not necessarily Ilka.
No, not necessarily. Yeah, that's a you're paying employees. You're doing you know what I mean?
Okay.
It's like they're publishing the game. It's a whole.
I didn't know if it was like the Sony Marvel Spider-Man deal where like when they make a movie, like Marvel kind of gets a cut of it, Sony gets a cut of it. You know, I didn't know if it was like
It's
Or-
the most likely outcome is that you have benchmarks, and it's like if we sell this many copies, this level of executives gets this much bonus.
Okay.
And then at every tier, that's the most likely way that goes
Okay.
down. Yeah.
I want to push back a little bit on what you're saying with the reception, Jake, and that
Yeah.
is look at Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, because that probably, I don't know if it hit the benchmark, but it did sell just as well as BDSP. But their public reception was not. It wasn't like, yeah, we want this again.
I
So
feel
they
like-
didn't
no,
make a new one. They didn't make another
Oh wow!
one.
I
I love this argument because I think you're dead wrong. Because
Go for it.
to
I
me-
think people love it.
No hate, absolutely no.
No, yeah,
hate.
yeah.
We're just having fun. But
Absolutely.
but to me, I think the Let's Go games they're fulfilling a promise to consumers that's like this is capitalizing on Pokemon Go. The reason that it's in Gen 1 is because that's who Pokemon Go most appealed to. It's that age of person. You know, there's all this stuff that goes into what that product is.
True.
And I think the reason you don't get another Let's Go game is because what the Let's Go product is does not work nearly as well the second it's not Gen 1.
Yeah.
The second you make it, you know, all of a sudden it becomes and then what? Do you have a second game on Nintendo Switch that's baby's first Pokemon game? That doesn't make any sense. Like it's
but maybe on
baby's
Switch
first,
too.
No, it's like baby's second Pokemon game.
Yeah.
No.
So Go is not as
Soul's
popular.
defense.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Go is not as popular.
Because I'm kind of on Soul's side on this argument. We've had, you know, multiple discussions about this, and like my thing is, I would struggle to find the interview, but I certainly can try if anybody wants me to. But I swear I remember it. Soul, Dusty, Jake, all of y'all can hopefully remember as well. But where shortly after Let's Go, Masuda literally compared it to the games, said that he would like to continue it, where it's like a thing of you have your main 2D side-scrolling Mario games and your Galaxy, your Wonder, the 3D Mario games, and like he said that he wanted that for the Let's Go series. Well, and then so it shows they had a plan to do it. And if you know,
I mean, I think they're starting to develop that, right? We've got our main series, which is the competitive.
That's what I was saying earlier.
But my point is
Pokemon?
that he was talking about that with Let's Go specifically.
Yeah, I think Let's Go
if I
is
remember
intense.
correctly.
I don't know. Let's Go's weird.
Can I clarify this? Can I clarify what this interview? Because I think I have it in front of me.
Okay, absolutely do. I loosely remember it, so please.
It definitely does not say what you said, Lumi.
Yeah, just to clarify? So this is the quote from Masuda. These games are not spin-offs. They are core Pokemon titles. As for whether we would make other games that could connect to Pokemon Go, that will depend how the games are received. If we hear a lot of people saying that they enjoy being able to bring Pokemon to these games from Pokemon Go, we'll think about maybe having future titles also be able to connect to it. So he was talking specifically about the ability to connect to Pokemon Go.
He's also talking about the players of Pokemon Go.
That's not the interview I remember, but if I can't find it, then strike it from the record, you know?
Either way, he does say that he's taking into account the reception of what the players think.
For a feature.
just messing with you.
Not for the, oh my god. Oh god.
But it's true what he says. But I agree with you in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I don't have any skin in the game anyway. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's whatever to me. I'm just making a point for making a point.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And I do want to just give a huge shout out to everyone, all of the new people and viewers, listeners who have decided to subscribe, but then also support us financially. Over this last week, we got so many new people just like leaving comments and people who have joined the community. So I'm just thrilled to see all the new faces. This year is going to be so much fun. And then, we also want to give a special shout out to our Patreon supporters and our YouTube channel members.
Yeah, so obviously we got to shout out our supporters in the mythical tier. SEH Art Gold, Trash Panda, Rhinestole, Case Con, Brandon, and Candace Wendy's. Then a special shout out to our Arceus tier supporter, Vinay Purum. And then if I can get a drum roll, please, because we have
what else can we do it?
Game Freak Inc. tier supporters.
Dude, Masuda's in the house.
And Bramtastic.
Say it one more time.
And Bramtastic.
Say it one more time.
Go get him, Bramtastic.
Dude, appreciate you guys so much. Thank you so much for the support.
Oh, rock.
We love you guys. We really appreciate it. You guys are gonna get us through these slow months. This is great.
Yeah.
We're thrilled to see the community growing.
Thank you.
We appreciate you guys so much. If you want to support and get access to our archive of Secret Power bonus episodes, if you want to get access to our secret Discord server, there's a link in the description. And appreciate it. Appreciate you guys.
Hype.
Thank y'all.